Hello and welcome back to Rev Real Estate School. I'm your host, Michael Montgomery, and today we're joined by a social media maven. We have Rachel Kilmer on the show, and she's a real estate agent in Kansas City, also licensed in Missouri. And here's the really interesting thing about Rachel. In 3 years, she's been able to rise to the top 3% in her market, which is mind-blowing. In 3 short years, she's been able to get there. And she's been named one of the top real estate agents within her community, as well as social media influencers. So this is all extremely amazing at 3 short years in the industry. And we're going to talk a lot about this, but a lot of this has been driven by social media as well as TikTok. So outside of real estate, she's a massive Kansas City fan, Kansas City Chiefs and Royals, and spends time cheering on her teams with her 3-year-old son and golden retriever. So enjoy this episode with Rachel Kilmer. Rachel, how are you doing today?
Hey, great. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for taking the time. We're so excited to be chatting with you and hearing all about your journey in real estate, which hasn't actually been that long. You've been in real estate, what is it, 3 years?
Yes. Yep. 3 years, almost exactly.
3 years, and you've risen to the top 3% in your market in that period of time.
Yes. I am one of the rare cases that had really early success, and I'm very grateful for it.
Oh, I cannot wait to get into that. I cannot wait to unpack that. But let's start with just your journey in real estate, and then we're going to get into this early success. So it's always helpful, I think, to have a background as to where this individual came from and how they got into real estate. That can always impact kind of our early success. So can you walk me through your journey into real estate, like the years before real estate, what you were doing, and then why you decided to get into real estate?
Yes. So the first about 6 years of my career, I was in sports broadcasting. I was a reporter, sideline reporter, host, post-game host, all that good stuff. And the company I was working for is a local sports station here in the Kansas City market, was having layoffs, and I had a lot of warning. I had a lot of time to think about what I was going to do. In TV, you have to move around a lot from contract to contract, and I just was not willing to leave Kansas City again. I had finally worked my way back and didn't want to move. So ended up taking a sales job at a local senior living community and learned that I was good at sales. And I was like, well, this is awesome. I love it. Then 2020 hits, and not only does everything change in the world, in my own life, I had my first child in March of 2020. So yeah, went into the hospital from one world and left into a different world. It was crazy, but I thought, well, great. Now we can all work from home. So now I can have flexibility with my job and, be a present parent as well. But my company was just not willing to change their structure. They wanted their staff in office, 5 days a week, and they have the prerogative to do that. So I looked elsewhere and thought, I know a real estate agent pretty well from working in sales at a senior living community. I'd referred her a lot of business, and we had a great working relationship. So I reached out to her and said, what do you think? And she was like, you would be great at this. And the rest was history. So I quit my wonderful job I would have stayed at forever. It was a great job, great pay, dropped it, went, all in, cold turkey, and with a 6-month-old baby during a pandemic. And here we are 3 years later.
Amazing. So I think that there is a lot to unpack there, but I'm really curious to know what was going through your mind, because as you're transitioning into real estate, 100% commission, of course, as we all know, and just the uncertainty of that. How did you handle the uncertainty of having this 3-month-old baby, no longer having, W-2 paycheck coming in? How did you handle that?
Well, I had a partner at the time that had a steady income, and that is a privilege that not everyone has. And I'm very aware of that, especially the further I get into real estate, trying to help bring new people up. Not everyone has the life circumstances that are conducive to going straight full commission, and so it was just life circumstances that I was able to do that. But, still, of course, it was scary. I remember I had a spreadsheet where I was crunching numbers that I had put in, my laptop cost this, my cards cost this, and waiting for that break even point. And it didn't come for probably 3 or 4 months at least before I made enough, my first or second sale covered all the expenses that I had sunk into it.
Which is already quite quick. When you think of a startup business of sorts, it's rare that they're cash flow positive after 1 year, even 2 years. And I think sometimes in real estate, we think that we're going to start off in day one in cash flow positive territory, but we are starting a business. And as such, we're going to have to deal with the fact that our burn rate at times, especially off the start, is going to exceed our revenue. But I do tend to agree with you. Sometimes we do have these privileges that are afforded to us where we're able to kind of keep the lights on, but it is a tough place to be in as a brand new agent if you don't have that steady stream of income. So I always am very, very empathetic to the fact of people who do have to juggle two jobs as they're getting into real estate, because ultimately we had to keep food on the table. That's number one. And then as we start to scale through real estate growth, but you did see this like hockey stick growth very, very early on in your career. So what do you attribute that rapid production increase to?
Number one, I had amazing mentors. I joined a team. I don't know how people do this without joining a team. And my two mentors have, currently, I think their combined years of experience is something like 70 years of experience combined. They've been selling forever. They've seen it all. And they were so gracious and just opening up their brains. Now, I had to dive in and ask the questions and show up every day. But I think it's mentors. I'm just a very curious person. I want to know everything about everything. So I was constantly asking questions, doing things that I knew were not going to make a profit for me, like doing showings for them, going to inspections for them, going to open houses, which sometimes you get a client from, but most of the time you don't, like all the things, just really putting myself out there and trying. And then ultimately social media kicked in too. And once my social media account started picking up traction, then I started generating steady business from there. And it was kind of off to the races after that.
Okay, amazing. Because I think, yeah, we definitely have to spend some time here on social media. But thinking through this concept, you hit on a couple of important points. And I think a big one is this concept of you were a very good mentee because you were engaged in asking questions. And I do think that this curiosity piece is quite key. So is this natural for you, or did you go into this relationship thinking to yourself, hey, I need to be a good mentee here too?
It's just natural for me to do that. When I first started out in sports broadcasting, I slid into the DMs of the local post-game reporter for the Royals here in Kansas City. And I was like 18, maybe 19. And I was like, hey, like, how do I become what you are? And he was like, come on out and job shadow me for a day. So I still to this day credit him for so much of what I've built in my career because he was so willing to let me come. But then I followed up and continued to maintain that relationship and like emulate everything he does. And I still, anytime I see someone that like they have what I want, then I ask the questions, I show up, and I don't know, it's very natural to me to do that.
But it's also really interesting that like people are, a lot of times they think we get in our own way and we're like, well, I don't want to, the Royals broadcaster doesn't want to hear from me. And so we kind of talk ourselves out of this. But the fact that you just put yourself out there, so much can happen from just these small little casual conversations or small little reach outs that we make can blossom into these amazing things. So it does take a fair amount of courage too.
Yeah. But I think most people are kind and most people want to help other people. So if you do it in a way that's not annoying or obnoxious and it's a sign of respect to reach out to someone and say, hey, I think what you're doing is awesome and I want to do that. What can I learn from you? The worst they can say is no. So I think it's always worth putting yourself out there.
Totally. And they rarely do. They rarely say no. Like when somebody asks me those sort of questions, it makes you feel quite good about yourself and you want to help, of course. But let's unpack this whole notion of social media. So tell me if I'm off base here, but did you originally start with TikTok as the strategy that you were going to use?
Oh, no, not at all. I thought TikTok was for teenagers and that I was in my late 20s and had no business being on TikTok at the time. My original strategy was YouTube. Because of my background in television, it was really natural for me to make long form videos. And YouTube is great because it is evergreen. It lasts forever. So there's still videos that I made in the first 4 months of having my license that still people watch now and generate leads for me. So YouTube was my first thing. And then TikTok kind of fell into my lap a little bit down the road.
And so how did TikTok fall into your lap? Was it just kind of testing and seeing if this was a strategy that would work for you?
The first few TikToks I made were about real estate, like transactional stuff. Like this is a joke about inspections and this is the joke about appraisals. And then a couple of like Chiefs TikToks sprinkled in there. And then I made one that was about different neighborhoods in Kansas City. It was like a joke about which neighborhood's the snobbiest, basically. And it kind of went viral. I think it landed at like 800,000 views or something. And I remember laying in bed that night, like before I was excited if I hit like 3,000 views. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I remember watching it take up like, oh my gosh, look at this, texting my friends and stuff. And it built up a following. And then I have a lender friend that he has a great TikTok and gets a lot of his business from social media. His is specifically to mortgages though. And he was like, you need to focus on this Kansas City thing. Like no one is niching down to our market like that. And if you just focus on Kansas City, like I think you have a brand there. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And then took it and ran with it. And then ever since then, like I was like, this is my brand now. I am like the Kansas City person on TikTok. Now there's plenty of other great Kansas City influencers. So I don't act like I own the market, but I am the only agent that's really doing it. So from there, it just really came naturally. And I found like it suits my personality really well. It suits my editing style really well. And I feel like I'm kind of in community with the people on there. I recognize the names that constantly comment and share stuff and make jokes back and forth. So it really started off accidental and then it kind of became like intentionally organic, I guess I would call it.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. So I have a couple of questions about that. I guess the first one is, so did you see your growth occur through spikes basically? So it wasn't kind of a slow climb. You hit on a viral post and that just skyrocketed your followers.
For the most part. Yeah. When you're first, and the TikTok changes the algorithm all the time. So this was 3 years ago now, but at least for me, what I experienced is every time I had a viral video, my followers would increase by several thousand. And then once I hit, I'm going to say about 12, 13,000, it's been kind of a slow, steady slog up since then. I'm at 19 now. And I don't really expect to grow much more than that because there's only so many people that live in Kansas City and are active on TikTok. So, could I capture a few more, 1,000 of them? Yeah, but I'm never going to have an account that has 100,000 followers. Most of them would not be in my market.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, important point because a lot of times if we're comparing ourselves to different businesses, different influencers out there, your focus is Kansas City. You don't necessarily need somebody in, Seattle. They want to follow you, great, but this is your market and that's your focus on it. But I'm curious about how you started to think through the type of content you were creating for TikTok specifically. Now you mentioned jokes. Was that the original, like leaning into humor initially?
Yes, for sure. And it still is to this day. Like most of mine that get the most views are humor based, kind of like inside jokes about like, well, this neighborhood doesn't like this neighborhood, or like this area has terrible roads or whatever. That's still really my biggest thing because I'm not like the like aesthetic influencer type. If you can't tell by my rolling straight in off walking my dog look here, I just am real. And that's what's great about TikTok is you can be really genuine. It doesn't have to be this like pretty like vlog day in the life to get traction. It can be just like a quick 10-second joke of like a shared tidbit of knowledge that like everyone in our community knows is kind of how most of my videos connect with people.
Got it. So is there less content that you're producing that is just purely real estate centric and it's more Kansas City centric?
Yes, for sure. I would say I make about 20% real estate and the rest of it is Kansas City based. And by Kansas City based, I mean, like there's very little about me. It's like about, like I mentioned, like neighborhoods, areas. And I do some like, hey, look at this great restaurant kind of videos. But for the most part, it's just shared humor. And then I do sprinkle in real estate, but people don't follow me for real estate. They follow me for Kansas City content. And then if they see a real estate video every once in a while, that's great.
Perfect. Okay. So now can you walk me through this? So how do you transition somebody who's following you for just interesting Kansas City style knowledge? How does that person then turn into a client? Are they watching your videos, presumably, and they're building a connection with you? And then do you just sprinkle in, the real estate content, but also during your videos, are you mentioning that you're a real estate agent just to kind of drop that seed, or is it just purely Kansas City content?
I don't. And I know that flies in the face of the rules. Like have a hook, have a call to action. I don't do that stuff. And maybe it'll come to a time where I have to, but I just really like to be organic and I'm genuinely having fun doing this. So I think really the magic potion for it is, I don't know if you are a TikTok user, but people that are TikTok users are doing this and scrolling their phone for an embarrassing amount of time per day, most of us, I would say. And so if you're seeing the same faces, you get to know them. They feel like your friends. And so I think my name on TikTok is Rach the Realtor. So it's inherently implied in my name. And I sprinkle in a real estate video every once in a while so they know I'm a real estate agent. I don't think I have to be in their face. And I think it's the same for all real estate marketing. It's just be present in their life and then they'll call you when the time comes.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of us as real estate agents to not think through like, how are we going to reinvent the wheel when it comes to explaining a home inspection? And that's just, it's not that that's not important, but there's a time for that content, and that content's probably more in a one-on-one capacity than it is in trying to get discovered basically throughout Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
So
there are a lot of, sorry.
no, go ahead.
There are a lot of agents that do make real estate agent facing content, and I don't want to discount that, because there are agents that have great accounts that do post about real estate. Just know that your audience is other realtors, and there's a great business model to be had there in terms of driving referrals. So if that's what you want to do, I think it's great. But if you want to have client facing content, then yeah, the nitty gritty of real estate is just not entertaining unless you're in the middle of a transaction.
Fair. Yeah, totally fair. Okay, so thinking through your process here. So how many times a day or a week are you posting on TikTok right now?
My goal is to post 2 to 3 times per day, Monday through Friday. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less. And the tricky part about TikTok is it is so much about creativity and kind of if those creative juices are flowing that day or not. So I kind of try to just ebb and flow with my creativity, but really push myself to sit down, get my phone out, and at least intend to make 2 to 3 TikToks per day.
And are you doing these TikToks on location in X community, or are you doing them at your desk in the office?
The vast majority of them are shot right here at my desk in the office.
Really? Okay. And then, so walk me through kind of the editing process. Are you handling that, or do you have that outsourced?
On TikTok, I do it all myself. I do it all right in the app. I think if you are making TikToks and it's taking you an hour to edit them, you're missing the point. It is supposed to be fun, off the cuff, really genuine, like a glimpse into your life kind of content, in my opinion. The really highly produced stuff sometimes goes well, but I think really people connect with like when it looks like you literally just had a thought, got out your phone and posted it, and then put your phone down and walked away. So for me, it's all right in the app on TikTok. I have help on other social platforms, but TikTok specifically, it's all me.
It's all you. Okay, interesting. And then now walk me through this concept of on-camera presence, something that I think it takes some time to grow within there. You clearly have a background in this from sports broadcasting, but what tips would you have for somebody who wants to grow on TikTok, but kind of struggles with their ability to engage with the audience or show a level of on-camera presence that they'll need?
Yeah. Well, something that I think is a bit of a hot take that I always tell people is not everyone has to do video content. So if you don't want to do it, but you feel like you should do it, I think like throw the should away. Do something else that's enjoyable to you, because it's not going to feel natural if you force yourself. If you're someone that wants to do it and is just nervous, then it's back to like what we were talking about earlier. Just put yourself out there. I think just trying it, doing it over and over again, and having a lot of confidence is going to go a long ways for you. So if you, what's the phrase where it's like, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. You just put that phone in front of your face, fake it till you make it, and you'll find your voice eventually.
That's a really good suggestion. And we had somebody else on the show who did TikTok, and she said the same thing. She said, like, initially I had no camera presence and I just did more of them. And because you kind of can't think yourself into having good camera presence, you almost have to practice yourself into good camera presence. So it's not something that you can, write down on a doc and indicate, okay, now I have camera presence. You have to actually do it. And so that does mean that initially, if you're building it, you may look back at your previous videos and cringe a little bit. And I think if you're not cringing a little bit, then you're not starting early enough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
So are there any tools that you use, I mean, outside, of course, of the TikTok app, in order to improve your workflow with posting this frequently?
Yes, tons. The biggest one that I use is a tool called repurpose.io. It's a website you use. I have a referral code for it. But you basically tell it to repost your video from whichever platform it originates on to the following platform. So mine is set up to repost every single TikTok video to Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and I think there's one more, but it goes everywhere. And so automatically I make one video and I have content on like 5 different social platforms immediately. It's only $200 for the year. And I think it's like the best money you can invest if you're trying to do social content. The other thing that I do is when I make a video, I try to take the topic and use it on other platforms as well. So like if I make a long form YouTube video that has 5 bullet points and I spend 10 minutes talking about it, like how can I condense this down into a 30-second video on TikTok kind of thing, so that anytime you're investing like brain power into creating content, repurposing it literally or repurposing the ideas in a different way for a different platform.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Repurpose.io. It's a big tool. Like there's a lot that you can do within it, but yeah, I don't know how you survive posting natively. I know that there's benefit to posting natively throughout, but we just got to think about our time ultimately too. Now, outside of TikTok, since you're reposting to these other platforms, maybe you can walk me through this. Is TikTok number one as far as actual leads that are coming your way?
Yes, I would say it's about neck and neck with YouTube, which surprises everyone because I have 19,000 followers on TikTok and it's so cool. But YouTube isn't as like sexy or whatever, not like the cool thing. It's been around forever, but it is a tried and true. Like, if you give YouTube what it wants, it will reward you. So I probably am about evenly split between TikTok and YouTube, and then get like a sprinkling here and there from Instagram and Facebook.
And for YouTube, are we focusing mostly on long form, or are we doing shorts as well?
Long form, I actually have two pages. One is dedicated to trying to target out of town people. So every video I make for that is for people that are getting online and searching for content as if they were moving to Kansas City. The other one is my podcast channel. And that I go ahead and repurpose my TikToks to as well. And because it's more oriented towards people that already live here and are wanting to know more about other people in the community.
And so walk me through the thinking behind the podcast and what caused you to want to do this, and maybe walk me through some of the success that you've seen with it.
Yeah. Number one, it's just fun. I just enjoy it. I like people. I think this is just such a people business. I think most of us do. Number two, it was when TikTok was in question in Congress and they were talking about banning TikTok. And I thought, oh man, this is a big chunk of my business. I really don't want to lose. So let me buckle down and make sure I'm capitalizing on this audience elsewhere. So I created a monthly e-newsletter that I do now that gets a great open rate. And then I created the podcast at that time. The podcast isn't necessarily designed for people to listen to the podcast and immediately call me to sell their house. For me, it's more about like being present in the community, being a connector of people. Literally, my podcast is called Connecting Kansas City. So it's just about introducing people to other interesting Kansas Cityans and getting to know more people. And if a deal comes out of it, great. But I really just see it more as kind of an expansion of my brand, quote unquote.
Got it. Yeah, it's another way for you to connect with the community ultimately, and the name the name says it all in many ways too. What
Yes,
about
exactly.
walking me through lead sources or ways that you tried to build your business over the course of the last 3 years that you were like, hey, this is not for me?
Yeah, I recently finally bought into Zillow, and sorry if Zillow's listening, but oh, it has not gone well. And you know what? I knew it wouldn't. That's why I didn't do it for 3 years. It's not me at all. But I did it because I just like felt this kind of weird like peer pressure, like, oh, everyone else is doing it, like I should do it. And we're trying to grow our team. So I have some newer agents on the team that I'm trying to like, I want so badly for them to succeed. So I was like, how can I like cheat code this and get them some quick business? Let's just throw some money at Zillow. And now I'm like only 2 months into the contract. And I'm like, this is so dumb. So I think my lesson learned from that is like, you can't throw money at anything. Like you have to do it the hard way. And that's how I built my business. So trying to suddenly do it a different way was not a good decision. And it's one I'll learn from for sure.
And so what was more challenging about, or what was, I guess, less appealing from your approach to the Zillow process? Is it this concept of feeling almost like, hey, we're just cold calling / online leads?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. My leads that come to me from social media are not just like warm, like they already have decided to use me by the time they reach out to me. They already feel like they know me. So it creates this really warm transaction because we have this shared sense of humor. We already like each other. They come ready to make a transaction and they come already feeling good about me. Versus Zillow, they don't know. They don't have any idea who I am. I'm just a random person that answered the phone or has to follow up with them and call them. And some of them are just clicking and they accidentally click the link. It's a completely different relationship with the client. And I really greatly prefer the ones that want to work with me, not the ones that I have to chase down. And it's worth the extra time and effort to get with the ones that actually want to work with me rather than chasing like the easy button and getting the ones that are harder to chase down.
Totally, totally. And the interesting thing about the easy button with that is it's seemingly easy because you get a name and a phone number, but it's actually, if you kind of go underneath the hood and you think through the progression of how you actually have to convert that person, like there's a huge argument to be said that that's significantly harder than creating compelling content on a regular basis and just having people call you.
Absolutely. And I know there are agents that have been successful with Zillow. And so it's not to discount them and their business model
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. I think you have to be someone that's a little more like analytical and scientific about it with great systems to do well on Zillow. And for me, it's more about relationship than anything. So the social stuff just makes a lot more sense for me.
Yeah, and it's a really good call. It's for Zillow. There's a lot of agents that thrive in that environment, but you're right. I tend to see it as people that want to build teams and need some predictable source of leads for their agents, regardless of the quality, but then also solo agents that just are going to be extremely systematic, especially with their follow-up. Those are really the two that can make a go at it. The remainder, honestly, it feels like spinning your tires and throwing money at something that doesn't necessarily end up coming to fruition.
Yep. And that hurts. So lesson learned. I will know.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good suggestion. So what would you say to somebody, let's say that they were newer on in their career, whether that be day one or even 5, 10 years in their industry, and they feel like they're starting all over again? What would you say to those agents by way of encouragement?
It's a tough job. I think that this is more for newer agents, but when I talk to newer agents, they're like, whoa, it looks like you're having so much fun and doing so great. And like, yeah, that's marketing. It's not good marketing to be like, I had the worst day ever and 3 transactions canceled and an inspection went bad and an appraisal came in bad. So I think first of all, it's just like validating that it is really hard to be good at this job consistently. I would just offer that encouragement, because I know like when my numbers are down, I'm so hard on myself and I have to take a step back and be like, you know what, like this is a hard job. And people don't realize that unless you're in it. And then I would say, like, think about what you're good at and what you actually enjoy and how can you turn that into marketing. And for me, that is social media. I don't love social media like personally, but I like it for my business and I like creating videos and storytelling. So that's kind of how I landed here. I don't enjoy cold calling or door knocking. So if you're trying to, and like, if you're the person that hates video and is forcing yourself to do video because it's what you're supposed to do, same thing for you. Like, I just think it's so much about knowing who you are, having a lot of self-awareness about who you are, what you're good at, and then using that avenue to build your business.
Totally. Makes perfect sense. And then how do you start to think through the time management of that? Because content creation is, I mean, that's a full-time job in many respects too. So how do you allocate your time throughout the day in order to allow for that?
Honestly, creating my TikTok videos, I spend 30 minutes, maybe an hour at the most per day on that. And sometimes when it's closer to an hour, it's more because I'm like, saw one too many Taylor Swift TikToks and went down a rabbit hole of just watching them and not making anything. So it does not take long to make good content on TikTok. Long form YouTube videos does take more. So that when I got busy, I stopped making them. And that's, like I said earlier, YouTube continues to generate leads for you. So it's great because it's still treating me well, but eventually you have to get back to feeding the beast. So YouTube, I have blocked 2 hours one day a month to shoot 4 videos, so that I am putting up 1 video per week. And I am paying someone to go to their studio and have them shoot and edit them for me. Because if I don't do that, they will not happen. I'll get busy and make excuses and not do it. So having that like money on the line and someone else's time involved means I will show up. Even if I have to wing it, I'm going to do something. So for me, it's like an hour a day at the most on TikTok. Everything else is repurpose.io. I do try to get in my Instagram stories every day. That takes 5 minutes at the most. And then 2 hours once a month on YouTube. And then the podcast is about 30 minutes an episode. And I do hire that out for editing as well. So that's 2 hours on YouTube per month. That's 2 hours on podcasts per month, and then about an hour per day at the most on TikTok. So it's really not that much, but you just have to commit the time to it.
That's actually quite interesting because if you break that all down, like you're looking at 1 to 2, let's say if we allow breaks and stuff, 1 to 2 working days per month for your content creation efforts, and you've been able to build a following of 19,000, generate consistent leads from that. Like sometimes maybe we make it out to be a bigger job than it actually is kind of what I'm taking away from this.
Absolutely. But I think the consistency is the key, and then planning ahead and committing to it. When I first started, I had like a schedule across the top of my desk that was like Mondays I do this, Tuesdays I do this in terms of social content. And I actually have an e-course that I just shot for people that is all about my entire social media campaign. And there's a downloadable in that is basically Mondays do this, Tuesdays do this, and it covers Facebook, Instagram, like all the platforms. So it's truly just what I do day in and day out. It's just kind of finding a routine and sticking to it. Now, you do invest a lot of time in getting that routine up and running, getting all the tools, lined up. But once you get there, it really does kind of run itself.
Yeah, totally. And do you, as far as like content ideas are concerned, how do you end up generating all of those in order to get 2 to 3 videos a day?
Yeah, TikTok specifically is driven a lot by trending sounds and trending templates, kind of, if you will. So a lot of times it's like a clip from a song or a quote from a movie that you mouth over and then write a caption to it. So for me, when I'm scrolling TikTok, like just mindlessly at night or whatever, I go and save sounds that are trending that I think I could use pretty easily. I gravitate towards really simple ones because, like I said, we're not creating a, Hollywood movie here. We're just creating a quick little snippet in our lives. So I save a sound, and then the next day I'll get up and be like, okay, I need to make TikToks. Don't have any ideas. So I go through the sounds and kind of like let something jog my memory that could work with Kansas City. I also keep a notes app in my phone. So if I am laying in bed at night and think of an idea, I roll over and jot it down in there. And like sometimes the note will be like, Harry S. Truman's from Independence. How am I going to turn that into a TikTok? I don't know, but like I'm going to eventually. So it's really just kind of trending things, and then as things come to mind, jotting them down and then finding a way to marry the two to create a TikTok.
Amazing. Yeah. So it's like we can't trust our own memories ultimately. When that inspiration comes to us, honestly, it comes to me usually when I'm like driving or walking the dog or something like that. That's when I get like the bolts of inspiration that then end up just being voice notes that eventually make their way into content. Maybe it doesn't all make its way into it. Some of it's complete craziness when I look at it later on, but you got to capture it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what would you say to somebody who, let's say they've been on TikTok for a few years, they've been on YouTube, and they're just not growing. They're just not seeing that growth that you've been able to see. How would you start to coach somebody through that?
Yeah. Well, two different beasts, TikTok and YouTube. TikTok, we don't know. They're not openly telling us what their algorithm is and what they prefer. So you're kind of guessing and taking stabs in the dark. And TikTok is so much about like just going viral and getting lucky. So I would say on TikTok, don't be discouraged. Just stay the course. Eventually something is going to stick. Just keep throwing stuff at the wall and eventually something will hit. If you're doing the right things in terms of like, does your video look good? Can we hear you? Is your audio good? Are you doing trending sounds? Like all that stuff. YouTube really is a search engine. It's really less a social media platform and more a search engine. So are you feeding it what it wants to see? What are people searching? Are you making that content? Usually if you are, they will find you. If you are making good content, again, where they can hear you, they can see you, it's a topic that they want to know more about, and you give them good information, they will find you and they will reach out. So both of them, it's just do the basics, stay with it, don't quit, and be consistent, and you will start to see results.
Mm-hmm. That's a good suggestion. And you don't really know when these peaks can occur, right? And I think that's kind of, we have to understand that that's what it's got to keep us going is the next one. It's kind of like an open house in many ways. You can go and sit 5 open houses and get nothing and sit another one and then end up getting 4 really qualified leads that want to buy in the next 2 days. And you don't know which open house that's going to be.
Yeah. I always joke that social media is my open house. It truly is. It's the same concept. You're putting yourself out there to meet people. And eventually some of them are ready to buy, some of them are not. And another point I didn't make is that success does not mean followers and views, right? We're here to sell houses. Success means clients. So you may generate amazing leads off of 1,000 followers because you have the most engaged 1,000 followers out there. So I think something a lot of people lose track of is like chasing clout and followers and all of that. And like, that's great. And it does create more opportunities because there's more people watching your content, but like, don't be discouraged if you only are getting 300 views, but you're getting 6 comments every time. That's an engaged audience that will also produce results for you.
Good point. Yeah, we need to be thinking in terms of leads and not in terms of just pure views and pure followers. And there's another component to this too. I just think as we start to create more video content, whether it be TikTok or YouTube, we generally just have to present. Like that's what we're doing within our career. And when you're on camera, you're kind of forced into being a presenter just by the way of looking at the camera. You have to stare at this camera versus staring at a seller. So I see people that do really good work with video. Those skills just translate throughout the whole real estate process. They're better at talking to leads. They're better at converting sellers. And that's because they've had to force themselves, even if they haven't gotten one lead from YouTube, they're better real estate agents because their ability to present and their ability to communicate has improved through that mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, you have to research your content too. You have to know your stuff if you're going to create content for the internet.
Totally.
So that only helps with your face-to-face interactions. And another thing that I think people lose sight of when they're creating video content is, oh gosh, I'm not converting any new internet rando leads, which your sphere is still seeing it though. Like people are still seeing the content and seeing that you're putting stuff out there. And there's still a ton of value in people you already know seeing your content. They're not going to come to you and be like, hey, I saw your TikTok and that's why I'm going to use you as my real estate agent, even though I've known you since high school. But that TikTok they saw reminded them that you are a real estate agent and you are educated and you are, well-spoken, and that you would be a great asset for them to use in their transactions. So even if you're not getting random internet leads from social media, there is still a ton of value in it, and you should still be doing it if it's something that is appealing to you.
Yeah, and that's a great caveat. It's got to appeal to you. I like that you take that approach. It's maybe not for everybody, and that's okay. Just as we wrap up here, though, let's say that you had to start all over again right now. So not 2020 when TikTok was brand new, although it is still very brand new in the grand scheme of things. But you were dropped off in a new city. You were given $1,000, and you were said, "Go and sell real estate." What are the first few things you'd do?
I love this question. Okay, so fun. So you're going to take like $50 and you're going to buy a selfie light for your phone, an obnoxious ring light. You're going to get a little lav mic that you clip onto your collar, and then you're going to go explore your city. And the rest of your $950 is going to be spent on meals, coffees, experiences, buses, get around your city, explore it, and you're going to document all of it. So every day you're going to make a vlog. Day one as a brand new transplant to insert city. Day two, and you're going to vlog your day. I went to this place for breakfast. $950 can go a long ways in terms of food if you're not going to fancy restaurants. So you're going out and experiencing things, and then you're making content for TikTok and YouTube. So TikTok is this way, vertical. YouTube is horizontal, in case you forgot. And you're going to stop people and you're going to interview them. And you're going to say, hey, I'm new to the city. What's your favorite restaurant here and why? And they answer, and then that's a video. And you're going to get their contact information from them when you record it and say, I'm going to post this on the internet later. What's your number and what's your name and what's your email? I'm going to send you the link as soon as I post it. And then you add them to your database, and now you have a new contact that you have put out there, and hopefully they obviously gave you permission and are excited about that. And so now you have a great recommendation where to eat. You have a piece of content of you interviewing them, and you have a contact in your database. So basically your whole online persona is me exploring my new city, and then you take it and run with it from there.
Amazing. What's going through my head right now is this feels like the modern way to door knock. Like back in the day, we used to door knock and introduce ourselves, and now we have the capabilities to do this in a such more personal and interactive way. Like it feels like modern day getting out there and meeting people, but doing so in a way that you're documenting it. It's absolutely genius. And I would say, even if you're not brand new to your city, even if you've been in the city your whole life, this strategy is something that could work wonders for anybody. And it's so simple.
It all is really simple. And coming up with that out loud, I was like, okay, I need to go do this immediately. Like just go do like man on the street interviews. It's great content, but yeah, all of social media, we all make it way harder than it has to be. It's fun. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be easy and user friendly. So it's just about putting yourself out there.
Amazing. Rachel, this has been fantastic. How can people reach out to you, learn about your podcast, learn about your e-course? Where can they all go to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on all the social media platforms at Rach the Realtor KC. My website is rachtherealtorkc.com, and I have links to my e-courses there, as well as my podcast, which is on all the podcast platforms. That's called Connecting Kansas City.
Amazing. Okay. And we'll have that all linked up in the description and the show notes. And thanks again for coming on. This is great. I want to, just like you, I need to go out and start interviewing some people about their favorite restaurants. This is really, really good information. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.